This is Mick Elliott from Electronics Specifier. I am on the ByteSnap stand with Director Dunston Power, and we're going to get through a few topics today. FPGA trends, component obsolescence, EV charging. But before we dive into those, Dunston, could you talk us through maybe some of the highlights on the ByteSnap stand? And I believe you have a King's Awards winner here.
Yeah, so we're always looking for a good demo to have on a stand, and we done work for a company called obsolescence, who are they're a King's Award winner for export basic science for designing a device which measures pipe thickness. So it's used in chemical plants where you've got a corrosive liquid going through a pipe, and you need to constantly monitor what the thickness of the pipe is. And these pipes can actually wear through really fast, particularly if you've got like oil with sand in it. And a few years ago they came to us to design a intrinsically safe version of their sort of basic product, and that can do 8 pipes at the same time. It was very challenging. It had a very wide temperature range it had to meet. It had to be able to work in like Alaska through to sort of Middle East. And so these guys, they've won an award for, they've got a technology which converts inducted energy into an acoustic wave. And we've basically designed readers for them, and we've recently designed a handheld reader with a lot of improvements on previous generations for them. Better display, radio, high data rate, this sort of thing. And we brought that onto the stands, yeah.
I mean, what specifically did ByteSnap bring into that? Because I think it's a kind of upgrade of the design. Yeah.
Well, we designed the whole of that product basically. The previous generation had it worked, but it had sort of quite some sort of technical challenges, particularly around the performance, speed, and stuff, and the battery lifetime and the type of battery it used. And so actually, really, it was. I wouldn't say it was ground up, but it was quite a major redesign to get it all working. Yeah.
Okay. And any other products on the stand you just want to mention there, or?
I think there's some sort of service. The stand's got a lot of products we've designed for various customers, ranging from sort of things like access control through to robotics, beamforming microphone I can see over there, IoT devices and EV charging products. We've got some services that we've sort of launched recently that it'd be good to talk about, that are really aimed at helping our customers get to market quicker and to stay in market and look after their intellectual property.
Okay. Now, moving on to component obsolescence, so the bane of technical directors' life, if you like. I believe you had a presentation here at Engineering Design Show earlier today. Maybe if you could just give us some of the key points from that, and then tell us how ByteSnap can actually help people cope with component obsolescence.
Yeah, as you say, I did a talk on this earlier. Effectively, there's obsolescence is a massive issue. And actually sort of getting more of an issue because of integration of parts. So if you look back, say 20 years, people were using a lot of things like 555 timers, 74 series, sort of standard parts that a lot of people sold. Over time, there's been more and more integration, the parts are becoming more bespoke. So companies can be very vulnerable to a part going obsolete. It can just trash a whole design. And this really came to light in particular during the component sort of supply chain crisis of sort of 2021, 2022. And we had an enormous amount of work really just redesigning products just to keep the company in the market. It wasn't really to add new features in as such. And really what I explored in the talk is various techniques that engineers can use to minimize obsolescence in the first place, and then to minimise the impact of it when it does occur, and then some strategies you can use if it does occur as well. But we're also launching a service here we call it OMAS, which is obsolescence management as a service, where we're for some of our customers, we're monitoring their BOMs, we're filtering out all the noise that comes through the system about component changes, life cycle changes, so that we can advise them what to do to stay in market and really break out of the sort of reactive cycle into, a more sort of strategic, calm cycle where you're going to get obsolescence. So there's no magic wand for that. But what you can do is not end up in a sort of panic when it happens, and you can also be ahead of the curve a little bit, so you see stuff coming earlier and you're prepared for it when it happens. So just to go back to the service, so what we're doing is some of our customers, we look after the BOM, we understand the design, and then we look after that obsolescence management, and then we basically make recommendations when things change, but we just filter out some of the noise. So we're not saying emailing them every time a resistor changes life status. We come with something more considered to say, this is happening, this is what we recommend you do.
Is this more on components, maybe semiconductor components?
Mostly semis, but it can be connectors as well. I mean, during the supply chain crisis, it was basically everything. It was actually pretty hard to find anything that wasn't affected. Historically, semiconductors definitely. And where the biggest impact is if it's a microcontroller, because you've got a whole load of software associated with it. So if you change that, you're not only having the problem of changing the PCB, but you could be doing man years worth of software effort as well. So yeah, it's important to be on top of it and to do what you can to minimise disruption.
Because I guess the first some companies get to know about this is when they get an end of life alert.
That's right, yeah. And if they're not on it, it gets lost in someone's inbox. They can, they can suddenly find they're in massive trouble because they've missed a last time buy opportunity. So that was the sort of thing I talked about in the talk, about some techniques you can use to minimise the likelihood and impact of obsolescence on your product. And
can you look at, one of the other concerns, I guess, is that nowadays semiconductors just generally have a briefer lifespan. The next iteration comes along pretty quickly now, whereas...
Well, that's true, but I think part of the skill of the design is, in my talk I said, memento mori, which is remember you will die, and every component will go obsolete, every product will go obsolete in the same way we all go obsolete. And really, when you design, you have to have a philosophy remembering that from the outset. Now, it could be you're doing some fast turn product where it's only got to be sold for a year or two, it's a non-issue, or it could be that you're doing a long-term, really niche product that you've got to sell for 10 years, but the parts are so cheap and you've got such high margin, you can just buy 10 years worth of parts at the outset, job done. So, but obviously most people fall in between those two things where obsolescence does affect them.
Okay. Moving on to IP, I think you just introduced Snap Pro IQ, which is a cloud-based tool.
Yeah. So one thing that we're aware of is we're design consultancy. We don't generally manufacture products. We sometimes do for our customers, but there's an issue when you're using remote contract manufacture, which most people do very successfully. You might want to control the licensing of your design. So if you've got a company that's got a particular, secret source product license, and they want to give a factory the ability to make 5,000 of them, they want to know they're making 5,000, not 6,000 or 7,000. So what Snap Pro IQ does is it integrates software inside the unit with a cloud-based system that basically licenses the designs as they go through, so that you can't actually make more than what you've paid for. So it also integrates monitoring of the factory test, so that you can pick up any sort of systemic issues early, and you can keep records of all the logs of all the boards you ever built. So if you get a failure in field 2 years later, you can use the database basically to pick out what went on with that board. So it's a combination of IP protection, which is the main purpose of it, but it also integrates a lot of that nice remote management. So it's really aimed at companies that don't run their own factories, that outsource manufacture, but want to stay on top of what's being built and control it.
Okay, have you seen some take up on that?
Well, yeah, so we've got an EV charger company using it basically. So again, the software, the hardware is being licensed, and they're able to stay on top of everything. So yeah, so it's early launch, but it's being successfully used at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to another of the topics I mentioned earlier, FPGA, what was trends there? It seems to be moving into AI, edge computing. Are you seeing that moving forward?
Well, something really interesting, for me personally, is that I used FPGAs from like the early 1990s. And actually I was an FPGA contractor before setting up ByteSnap in 2008, so I knew a lot about it, but I had very little take-up of FPGAs in the early years of ByteSnap in terms of work, and there's various reasons for that, but principally they were economic reasons. However, the last few years we've seen a real growth in FPGA work, and particularly relating to video. So there's a lot of video streaming, sort of IP streaming type products where we're using FPGAs, and we're using them at what you might call the low end, as in the smaller, lower cost FPGAs made by, say, people like Lattice, through to AMD's Xilinx type FPGAs, which much larger. We're doing more sophisticated things. The price point of the FPGAs is a lot more, but they're doing something a lot more sophisticated. So yeah, it's been quite interesting to see the FPGA market really take off. I know a lot of the PR and stuff is around AI and all the rest of it, but the main area we've seen it is with video.
Okay, and that's the main end market from your point of view. There's also mention of things like 5G. It can move into 6G as well.
Base stations, things like that. Yeah. I know that goes on, but it's not something that we ourselves have worked in. But the comms market, certainly FPGAs, were quite significant in base station market, certainly with 4G, and I imagine still are.
What's been the enhancement of performance of FPGAs to enable you to use it for this video processing?
A lot of the time you're trying to integrate a whole load of cameras onto a single camera port and do an image signal processing on it. So it's this sort of thing where you've got lots of system on chips that have got a single camera port, maybe two, a single output. But there's a lot of applications out there with lots of cameras where they're trying to do something more sophisticated. So a few years ago, for instance, we did a project which did video stitching where we had 320-degree view cameras, and then we basically pushed it all through an FPGA and an XP IMX processor, and are able to stitch the video to give a complete 360-degree view. So you could put on like a VR headset and you could look around as though you were there. That was it was a really cool project. Yeah.
Okay. And looking at end markets, what are you seeing as the hot markets from ByteSnap's point of view? Some of the hot markets can be sort of seen as sort of boring markets. Sometimes it's things like access control, industrial. I said a lot of the sort of chemical industrial market. They're constant, important in markets. Obviously, the military market is in growth at the moment for obvious reasons. Healthcare continues to be an important market for us, but we're also doing sort of automotive work. So we're spread across quite a lot of different vertical markets. But I'd say certainly things like industrial are always very strong, sort of constant markets. I think partly as well, we're a UK-based company, and UK is pretty strong in that sector. I mean, security is an important sector as well. From talking to companies, that's a market that has chugged along quite steadily while others have fallen away.
Yeah. I mean, anything around security, things like access control, they're getting more sophisticated. We've done systems that are RF and smart card reader systems, but also we work for some of the largest, best known access control companies with things like cameras as well, video systems as well. So, as we know, there's a lot of moves to get away from doorbells to wireless doorbells with cameras in. But that's not only at a domestic level, it's also a trend as well on blocks of flats and offices and all the rest of it. So there's it's a pretty strong market, and we've probably worked for like 4 different access control companies over the last few years, doing all sorts of products for them, and it continues to be a good market.
Just looking at EV chargers, there's been some negative comment about that over the past year now. Tell us your view on that, and also how ByteSnap is working to help EV battery chargers.
Yeah, sure. So, we could sort of talk about this all day, to be honest, because ByteSnap spun out a separate business called Versanetic, which sells EV charger blocks. So we don't sell chargers, but we sell IP solutions. Circuit boards, software, and design services for designing EV chargers. But I think what's happened with EV, it was a bit of a gold rush in the sort of 2020 or so, because their targets were put in for phasing out ICE vehicles, and so a lot of people piled into the market who probably weren't that suited to it, and a load of those have sort of dropped out. But I think it's going from that very immature, excitable market to something that is steady and mature. It's still a growth market. The number of EVs on the road is getting larger and larger, and what you need to remember with chargers is if you buy a second-hand car, you still might want a charger. So it's not just about the car sale, it's new car sales, it's used cars as well. They're great. I mean, people who drive EVs generally love them. I think it's over 92% or something of surveyed drivers said they wouldn't go back to petrol cars after switching to them. They're quiet, they're comfortable, there's very low maintenance. I could bang on about it, but certainly there are challenges of infrastructure. There's a lack of on-street charging for people who don't have drives, and I think that's, for me, the biggest challenge in the market isn't about EV prices, which have tumbled, or about the cost of charging, whatever. It's really getting an enablement for people who don't have their own drive to be able to economically charge, and a lot of that is not technical, it's sort of regulatory and government.
Okay, I was just going to say, so really that's an issue for the government to put right.
Yeah. I think that we're working with designing chargers for on street all the time, and it's a big area for us, and the technology's there. There's no problem with that, and it's at a good price point. The issue is just it's putting down spaces where people can charge their car and not have some big petrol SUV sat there. A lot of it's around that sort of local council, local government type politics, really.
Okay. And just to get back to the original point, you actually pulled together that package. You source the circuit boards. So
Versanetic actually sells circuit boards for chargers. So really, our customers just need the box.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm oversimplifying it. There's design around that, how you mount it, route to markets, and all the rest of it. But effectively, all the electronic innards we either design or can point the customers to. But if customers have a particular niche charger they want to do, the design into a particular thing, then we're probably the go-to. Versanetic is really the go-to consultancy for that in the UK. I don't really know of any competitors in that market.
Okay. So, Dunston, would you like to tell us a bit about your recently published book?
Yeah. So, I wrote a sort of mountaineering psychological thriller that was published December last year. It's done quite well, and it's up for a Banff Literary Festival Award. So, which is like, it's basically their mountain fiction award, which is like the biggest one in the world. So yeah, that's really cool. I find out fairly soon. But anyway, I have to say, whether we win it or not, it was very nice to get on the shortlist. So yeah, so really outside of work, that's creative writing's something I enjoy doing. Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was going to be a technical book, and threw me completely. That's
novel.
really interesting.
It's a novel, yeah.
I
It's
quite
a novel,
like thrillers, so
good. Well,
you might be looking at a buyer.
Published by Black Pear. You can get on Amazon as well.
Okay.
Whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, you must get involved in a lot of designs. Anything that sort of caught your eye, a slightly quirky design?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. So we get phoned up by people wanting all sorts of things, some of which I can't talk about because we're under NDAs or whatever. And a lot of them, as I said, are quite sort of mundane or not exciting, but we get some quite bizarre requests. And I'll never forget, there's one week where I was phoned up on the Monday by somebody who wanted a talking chicken. And then on the Thursday, I got phoned up by somebody who wanted a talking banana. It was like in the same week. So, yeah. So, there's all sorts of bizarre stuff that people want to do with electronics. Where I think one of the things we do as a company is we like to not only just design stuff for people, but really we like to help people with their ideas and their business models, and really get under the skin and help because a large proportion of designs in worldwide don't get to market because for various reasons, and we've got a very high success rate at ByteSnap, and I think it's partly because we try not just to say take what the customer says and just get on with it. We like to add a lot more value than that and just really get under the skin of what the business model is and come up with suggestions to actually improve products. And some of our longest term customers just run stuff by us all the time, and we talk it over and sometimes come to the conclusion, well, maybe not.
Okay. As a concept, how much do you need from a customer coming to you for help?
So we get sort of specs from customers ranging from something that's on the back of a fag packet through to these sort of military type documents that are pages and pages long with bullet points. And the sweet spot, I would say, is in the middle. But those pages and pages of documents, sometimes you'll find there's one line in there which says, design an AI machine for brain scanning, and then it'll have all this stuff. It must be green, and the paint must not rot after 2 years, and the paint must be hard. And, so it's not about quantity, it's about quality of spec. I like a one-page really high quality spec can be good enough for us to get going with. But we help build as well as doing work. We do a lot of feasibility studies where we build up the requirements spec, because I would say probably the majority of customers don't come to us with a fully polished requirement spec. I'd say most of them have something in between what a perfect spec and but it's enough to get started. So our typical model would involve doing a few days or weeks work just to get that all sorted and work out and also take risk out of the project. So look at anything that might make it unfeasible and take those risks out, and then at the end of it they can decide to go ahead or not, but they're much better informed.
Okay. Dunston Power, thank you very much.
Thank you.